Surrounding the lonely mountain peak, figures stood suspended in midair, all their gazes fixed on the black temple at the summit. In their eyes, a burning desire gathered, layer by layer. Hee, Lin Dong, when we make our move, I'm going to try my luck in that temple and see if I can obtain the Devouring Lord's legacy. If I succeed, then I guess you'll just have to count yourself unlucky. Lu Qing laughed from the side. Lin Dong smiled upon hearing this, then nodded. Everyone here had the qualifications to contend for the Devouring Lord's legacy, but in the end, who would succeed depended on each person's ability and luck. However, I think that temple might not be so easy to enter. Lin Dong's eyes locked onto the black temple as he spoke softly. Although the temple appeared silent and without any signs of activity, his intuition told him that there was a faint danger lingering in the air. This was the resting place of the mighty Devouring Lord. Would it really be so easy to just barge in? As Lin Dong muttered to himself, many of the strong figures in the sky began to stir. The strongest individuals who had made their way here were all at the perfect completion of the Death Mystique stage or higher, and there were even quite a few who had reached the Revolution stage. These figures were all well known in the demon realm, but here, they were nothing extraordinary. Let's move. After several minutes of restlessness, a red glint flickered in someone's eyes, and a loud shout echoed across the sky. In the next instant, a dozen figures burst into motion, and at the forefront of them were two figures with overwhelming fluctuations of primordial energy. Both were super experts at the Revolution stage. The atmosphere had been tense from the start, and as these figures moved, the pressure instantly shattered the tension. Many powerful figures could no longer hold back, charging forward in a frenzy. The sky erupted with gusts of wind, and streaks of rainbow light shot toward the Black Temple. The momentum was shocking. Aren't we moving yet? Little Mink, seeing this scene and glancing at Lin Dong, who had yet to take action, couldn't help but ask. Lin Dong shook his head slightly, his black eyes locked onto the Black Temple. The sense of danger only grew more apparent. Charge! In just a few breaths, dozens of top-tier experts had rushed up the mountain, but just as they were about to break through the 100-meter range of the temple, a sharp, high-pitched sound suddenly rang out across the heavens and earth. Whoosh! Everyone could see a black blade of light shoot out from the Black Temple, slicing through the air like a whip. In the next instant, it heavily struck the bodies of the dozen figures at the front. Bang! A deep rumble echoed, and to everyone's horror, they saw that the powerful defensive primordial energy of those top-tier experts instantly shattered. Among them, only 3 Revolution stage experts, their faces pale, were knocked back 100 meters. The others, spitting blood, fell to the ground like birds with broken wings, leaving long streaks of destruction across the wasteland. The sky, once filled with agitation, suddenly froze. The many experts who had been eagerly charging forward came to a sudden halt, their faces contorted with shock. What could possibly injure dozens of top-tier experts so quickly and even drive back 3 super experts at the Revolution stage? With a mix of fear and disbelief, they turned their eyes toward the Black Temple, where, faintly, the sound of footsteps could be heard. Rustle. The footsteps grew louder, and finally, the crowd saw a thin black figure slowly emerge from the temple. He held a black long sword, and there was no extraordinary energy around him, yet an aura of terrifying danger surrounded him. Is this the Devouring Lord? At that moment, almost 1,000 figures surrounded the mountain peak, and all of them changed expressions when they saw the black figure emerge from the temple. Their voices trembled in astonishment. Not far off, the strong figures of the 9 Phoenix clan and the Kunpeng clan, who had remained still up until now, also changed expression. The Devouring Lord? Hadn't he fallen and passed away? This? Grand Elder Zhu Li and Lu Qing's faces grew serious, and astonishment filled their eyes. It's not the Devouring Lord. Lin Dong's eyes remained fixed on the thin black figure. After a moment, he shook his head slightly. He didn't feel any energy emanating from this figure. This black shadow was definitely not the Devouring Lord. It's definitely strange. Grand Elder Zhu Li furrowed his brow slightly. The figure was as still as a mountain, with no life force, almost like a puppet under someone's control. The black figure, holding the black long sword, stood quietly before the temple. He made no move to look up or speak, standing there like a statue. "Let's move together and kill him." The sky was filled with numerous powerful figures standing in midair. The sheer number of them exceeded 1,000, and what was even more terrifying was that each of these individuals was a force to be reckoned with. The weakest among them had the strength of the perfect completion of the death mystique stage. With such a gathering of strong beings, even those of the level of Grand Elder Zhu Li and others could only temporarily retreat and avoid confrontation. "Yes, let's strike together." The voice commanded immediate agreement, and within moments, over 100 figures rose. Then, a vast surge of primordial energy erupted, and over 100 radiant energy whips shot out like lightning, roaring with immense momentum, speeding towards the shadow. However, faced with this terrifying assault, the shadow remained motionless. Without any defense, it simply stood still, allowing the fierce attacks to land on its body. Boom! The violent shockwave swept across the front of the Great Hall. Those watching immediately felt a surge of joy, but just as the joy began to rise, it abruptly froze. As the shockwave dissipated, the shadow was still standing there, unharmed. Hiss! A collective breath was drawn by the crowd in the sky, their eyes filled with shock. Over 100 top-tier experts had struck simultaneously, and yet they hadn't even caused a scratch? Who was this shadowy figure? The devouring deity temple. "It's really not so easy to enter," said Lu Qing, his face turning grim as he spoke slowly. Grand Elder Zhu Li furrowed his brow. Not far away, Kuren Yuan of the Kuanping clan and Mu Di of the Nine Phoenix clan both had tense expressions, clearly feeling the situation was tricky. "Grand Elder, what should we do?" Luo Tong from the Nine Phoenix clan asked, unable to contain himself as he looked at Mu Di. Mu Di paused for a moment, then turned his gaze toward a figure standing behind them. The figure glanced at the shadow in front of the hall, furrowed his brows slightly, and then nodded gently. Upon seeing this, Mu Di took a slow step forward. The powerful figures in the sky looked on in surprise. Was the Grand Elder of the Nine Phoenix clan finally going to make a move? "Mu Di is making a move. What should we do?" Little Mink asked in a low voice. If Mu Di succeeded in breaking through, wouldn't he be one step ahead? Grand Elder Zhu Li and Lu Qing exchanged a glance and then looked at Lin Dong. At that moment, Lin Dong was staring intently at the shadow. After a long pause, a flicker of light seemed to flash in his eyes, and a faint smile curved on his lips. "Don't worry, Mu Di probably won't have much luck." Hearing this, Grand Elder Zhu Li and the others were slightly startled. They knew Mu Di's strength very well. As long as he wasn't facing a peak expert who had truly reached the reincarnation stage, his chances of winning were considerable. Lin Dong smiled but didn't elaborate. He merely continued to fix his gaze on the shadow. His guess would have to be confirmed by the Grand Elder of the Nine Phoenix clan. In the sky, Mu Di slowly stepped forward. As he did, a dazzling wave of energy rippled out behind him in a series of vibrant colors, turning the very heavens into a spectacle of light. The radiant light quickly condensed in front of Mu Di, and within just a few moments, it formed a palm-sized 9-colored celestial wheel. The wheel shimmered with a brilliant array of colors, and an indescribable wave of unique energy began to radiate from it, causing the hearts of all the powerful figures to tremble. This celestial wheel had the essence of reincarnation. Clearly, Mu Di had tapped into the reincarnation energy he had touched and used it to launch this formidable attack. Such a strike was incredibly powerful. "This old man may be annoying, but his strength is indeed impressive," Lin Dong murmured, nodding in approval. Even though his spiritual energy had reached the level of a talisman master, he knew that to reach the level of an attack like Mu Di's, he would need to employ numerous methods. 9 Phoenix Celestial Wheel. Mu Di's face remained expressionless, but cold light gathered in his eyes. The next moment, his body transformed into a beam of light and shot forward, his voice filled with killing intent. Whoosh! In the blink of an eye, he appeared in front of the hall, and with a mighty strike, the 9-colored celestial wheel in his hand was hurled directly at the shadow. At that moment, it was as though space itself had been torn apart. The shadow remained still, But just as the nine-colored celestial wheel was about to land, it suddenly took a step back. Gripping a black long blade tightly, the figure slashed out. Whoosh! The slash was so powerful that it seemed to darken the very sky. Everyone could only see the two figures cross each other in an instant, and then, the previously violent energy suddenly froze. Crack! The shadow came to a stop and sheathed its blade. But at that moment, Mu Di behind it trembled. The nine-colored celestial wheel in his hand shattered, and a bloodstain appeared on his chest as blood gushed out. A deep sense of shock surged in Mu Di's eyes. With a palm strike to the ground, his body was sent flying backward, blood spraying as he desperately retreated from the mountaintop. His earlier calm demeanor was nowhere to be found. Now, he was a picture of disarray. Seeing this, everyone's scalp went numb. The Grand Elder Mu Di had been slashed with a single strike. And this was someone at the pinnacle of the reincarnation stage. What a terrifying slash. Lu Qing and the others couldn't help but shudder, their faces twitching in disbelief. The ability to injure Mu Di with a single strike, this was something none of them could achieve. To reach such a level, it was likely the work of a true reincarnation stage expert. Could the mysterious shadow before them be a peak reincarnation stage powerhouse? Huff. While they were still stunned, Lin Dong let out a light breath and slowly said, "I never expected there would be such a powerful devouring heavenly corpse here." Devouring heavenly corpse? Lu Qing, Elder Zhu, and the others were stunned when they heard Lin Dong's words. Their expressions grew confused, clearly unfamiliar with this so-called devouring heavenly corpse. Lin Dong wasn't surprised by their reaction. The devouring heavenly corpse was a unique creation of the devouring Lord. Even with the Lord's powers, the number of such corpses would never exceed a handful. Furthermore, most of them had been destroyed in the ancient war. Even the one in Lin Dong's possession was severely damaged. Although it was later repaired by the nine-tailed spirit fox, it was still far from its peak power. From what Lin Dong knew, when a devouring heavenly corpse was at its full strength, it could rival a reincarnation stage expert. The shadow in front of the devouring deity temple seemed to be one of these corpses, with its combat strength at a perfect level. This made Lin Dong feel a pang of envy. As someone who also possessed a devouring heavenly corpse, he understood just how powerful it was. However, the true terror of the devouring heavenly corpse was not in its offensive abilities, but in its defense. A devouring heavenly corpse at perfect combat strength might only be on par with a peak reincarnation stage expert in offensive power. Yet, with its terrifying defenses, even two reincarnation stage experts working together would struggle to defeat it. With one of these corpses, it was like having the ultimate shield. This is a unique creation of the devouring Lord. The one here likely has strength comparable to a reincarnation stage expert, Lin Dong explained briefly, then added softly, "Reincarnation stage?" At these words, Lu Qing and the others' faces changed, their expressions filled with concern. Though they prided themselves on being close to the reincarnation stage, there was still a huge gap before they truly comprehended it. Furthermore, this shattered space was extremely peculiar, making it very difficult for reincarnation stage experts to enter. So, if the devouring heavenly corpse here was indeed at the reincarnation stage level, they would truly be in a difficult situation. "What do we do now?" Xiao Yin asked, looking at the devouring deity temple up ahead. Clearly, if they couldn't even get through this first challenge, they might as well turn back. "Don't worry, let's observe the situation first." Lin Dong smiled. The devouring heavenly corpse was indeed formidable, but with so many experts here, they would surely find an opening if they were forced to fight. Everyone nodded, suppressing their anxiety. Above, Grand Elder Mu Di was retreating back to the Nine Phoenix clan, his face pale. A ghastly bloodstain ran from his shoulder down to his abdomen, blood pouring out, clearly severely injured. "Grand Elder, are you all right?" Luo Tong and the other Nine Phoenix clan experts were visibly alarmed. They knew Mu Di's strength all too well, yet now he was in such a sorry state. What exactly was that mysterious shadow? Mu Di's face darkened as he shook his head slightly. His gaze flickered toward the shadow behind them, though the figure seemed to be lost in thought and didn't make any move. Having seen Moody's example, the air grew tense. Many of the experts now stood silently, eyeing the stone-like figure standing before the devouring deity temple, afraid to rush in. However, this quiet didn't last long. After all, it was rare for anyone to stay composed in front of the devouring lord's legacy. After a brief pause, some experts gritted their teeth and stepped forward. But these new challengers were far more cautious. Instead of charging recklessly, they approached the devouring deity temple slowly, testing the waters. After several attempts, they soon realized that the shadow would only act if someone entered 100 paces of the temple. With this knowledge, the experts felt slightly relieved. In the sky, the forces of the Kuanping clan had gathered, with Kuan Yuan's eyes fixed on the shadowy figure, contemplating his next move. Grand Elders Zhu Li and Mu Di, Brother Lu Qing, and young friend Lin Dong, it seems none of us can break through on our own in this situation. I suggest we join forces to subdue this shadow. What do you say? Kuan Yuan finally spoke up after a moment of deliberation. Mu Di gave it some thought, casting a glance around before nodding. He had already tested the power of this mysterious shadow and knew it would be nearly impossible to get through alone. Grand Elder Zhu Li and Lu Qing exchanged looks and turned to Lin Dong, who seemed to understand the shadow's nature better than anyone here. They felt it wise to hear his opinion. Even if we join forces, we might not be able to take down this devouring heavenly corpse, Lin Dong said with a small smile. Though they had the advantage in numbers, this creature was as formidable as a reincarnation stage expert, hardly an easy opponent. However, he paused, lowering his voice. Though we may not defeat it, working together could expose a gap for us to slip through. This devouring heavenly corpse likely serves as a checkpoint. Once we're inside the devouring deity temple, we should have cleared it. Lu Qing and the others nodded slightly. Lin Dong's plan was to use their collective strength to create an opening and make a dash into the temple. They're probably thinking the same thing. In the end, it'll be a matter of who seizes the opportunity first, remarked Grand Elder Zhu Li. Lin Dong nodded slightly. Both Kuan Yuan and Mu Di were cunning individuals. They would surely see this as mutual exploitation. Kuan Yuan's suggestion could work, Zhu Li said, glancing at Mu Di with a faint smile when he saw Lin Dong's decision. The top powerhouses watching from around them in the sky noticed these influential forces uniting and exchanged knowing glances. Though Mu Di hadn't invited them directly, they weren't going to stand idly by. Once a gap appeared, they'd strike. Entering the devouring deity temple and obtaining its legacy was tempting enough to make even the four great clans wary. In that case, let's move together. Kuan Yuan smiled, taking a step forward as a vast wave of primordial energy surged around him, emitting a chillingly formidable aura. Mu Di, Grand Elder Zhu Li, and Lu Qing followed suit. As the three unleashed their reincarnation-level powers, the very space around them seemed to tremble. Lin Dong chuckled, moving in behind them. Although his cultivation level was merely at the major completion of the Death Mystique stage, no one underestimated him. The news of how he defeated Luo Lai of the Dark Abyss Tiger Clan in a 2-on-1 battle had already spread far and wide. With 4 reincarnation-level powerhouses and a little talisman master like Lin Dong, this lineup could contend with a true reincarnation stage expert. Yet, even in the face of such a formidable force, the shadow in front of the devouring deity temple remained still, immovable as a mountain. Attack! The 5 men focused intensely on the shadow. In a split second, they launched forward in unison, spreading out to 5 different positions, each unleashing fierce attacks on the shadow without hesitation. Swoosh! As the mighty primordial energy surged toward the shadow, it took a step forward, swinging a black blade that shimmered with a chilling gleam, tearing through the air as its light swept across. In an instant, the combined attack of Lin Dong's group collapsed, completely nullified. However, this outcome was something they had anticipated. Mu Di and the other 3 let out a roar, each grabbing hold of a beam of light that shimmered with the aura of reincarnation. Clang! The 4 beams of light clashed forcefully with the black blade light. This time, through their combined strength, they managed to block the devouring heavenly corpse's attack. However, it came at a price. as each of the four's throats released muffled grunts, their arms trembling violently. Ancient Thunder Talisman. Lin Dong's eyes sparkled as he directed his focus, conjuring a massive thundercloud in the sky. In a flash, a huge thunder talisman shot down, crashing toward the shadow. Swoosh. However, the moment the thunder talisman struck, black light rippled across the shadow's body, instantly absorbing the attack. Lin Dong's face showed no surprise. He, too, possessed a devouring heavenly corpse and knew it could consume attacks of all kinds. Whoosh whoosh. Just as Lin Dong's attack failed, the sound of tearing air came from behind. Hundreds of figures rushed toward the devouring deity temple in the blink of an eye. At that moment, the eye sockets of the devouring heavenly corpse, which was deeply entrenched, seemed to glow with a dark light. Lin Dong, who was close by, noticed the change in the devouring heavenly corpse. His eyes flashed in surprise, and with a flip of his hand, the Xintian Palace appeared in front of him. Sizzle. A low growl seemed to come from the devouring heavenly corpse's throat. With a shake of its wrist, the black long sword whistled through the air, causing the space behind it to collapse in an instant. A massive black light swept out. Boom, boom, boom. The black light tore through space, sweeping across the top experts who had been charging forward. Their defensive barriers shattered, and blood spurted everywhere. Figures were sent flying backward, and anguished cries echoed in the air. Not only they, but even the four who were closest, including Grand Elder Zhu Li, were blasted back 100 feet, their hands covered in blood. Clang. Lin Dong reacted quickly. As the black light approached, the Xintian Palace expanded and shielded him. However, even then, as the black light swept through, the Xintian Palace rapidly contracted and its glow dimmed, shooting into Lin Dong's body, clearly having sustained some damage. The Xintian Palace entered his body, but Lin Dong couldn't afford to be concerned. His eyes scanned the scene, and he saw that the dark light emanating from the devouring heavenly corpse's body had dimmed slightly. Clearly, the earlier attack had also consumed a considerable amount of its power. Now's the time. Lin Dong's eyes flashed, and with a single step, he shot forward like lightning, heading straight for the devouring deity temple. Just as Lin Dong's figure barely passed the devouring heavenly corpse, the black light surged again from its body. Without any indication of turning around, it swung its sword back with a single motion. Sensing the collapsing space behind him, Lin Dong's pores tightened. His eyes flashed urgently as he suddenly waved his hand. Sizzle. A black light appeared behind Lin Dong, followed by a shadow that emerged. It looked exactly like the previous black shadow, clearly the devouring heavenly corpse in Lin Dong's hands. The terrifying sword light swept down, but just as it was about to slice the devouring heavenly corpse in Lin Dong's hands in half, the dark light in its deep eye sockets flickered. The sword light suddenly veered off course, sliding past the right side of the devouring heavenly corpse, before the shadow flashed and headed straight for Lin Dong. Lin Dong. In the split second, he threw the devouring heavenly corpse to block the attack, had already shot toward the devouring deity temple. His peripheral vision caught sight of the shadow closing in behind him, with the terrifying sword light falling mercilessly toward him. At this moment, there was no time to dodge. Lin Dong's eyes flickered. With a firm bite of his teeth, he paid no attention to the danger and stomped his foot down hard. The stone slab shattered, and his figure shot forward once more, propelled by the force. It's almost there. Lin Dong glanced at the stone stairs to the devouring deity temple, roaring as he leaped forward and directly stepped onto the stairs. Sizzle. As soon as his foot touched the stone stair, a cold light slashed through his scalp. However, just as it was about to strike his body, it suddenly froze. The entire sky was silent. The scene before him was peculiar. Lin Dong's foot was barely on the edge of the stone stair, with only his toes holding his weight, while behind him, the shadow wielding the black long sword was so close that the deadly sword light had already reached Lin Dong's scalp. If it fell just a little more, Lin Dong would be split in half. But it didn't fall. The shadow maintained its position before slowly sheathing its sword and walking back, ignoring Lin Dong, who had stepped onto the stone stairs. He actually made it through. Little Mink and the others cheered at this sight. It seemed that once Lin Dong set foot on the stone stairs, he had truly passed the trial, and the shadow wouldn't bother him anymore. That was close. Little Yin wiped off his cold sweat. If Lin Dong had been any slower, the outcome would have been entirely different. This guy. Lu Qing and Grand Elder Zhu Li smiled at the scene. They hadn't expected Lin Dong to be one step ahead of them. They laughed, but Elder Mu Di and Elder Kuan Yuan both looked grim, helplessly shaking their heads. Haha, I'm ahead. Lin Dong, feeling the tension in his heart dissipate, turned and smiled at everyone, about to enter the devouring deity temple. Humph. However, just as he was about to step forward, a soft grunt echoed through the air. A figure suddenly shot out from the Nine Phoenix clan. The speed was terrifying, and the others could only catch a fleeting glimpse of it, as if the space itself twisted for a moment. The figure had already appeared before the shadow. The sudden turn of events caught everyone by surprise. Even Lin Dong and Grand Elder Zhu Li's expressions changed drastically. The speed of that figure was simply too fast. So fast that even they could only catch a faint trace of it passing through the air. Shoo! A black streak zipped through the space and appeared before the devouring heavenly corpse. Just as it seemed like the figure was about to dodge, the devouring heavenly corpse's body suddenly emitted a flash of black light. With a slash, the black long blade in its hand cut diagonally through the air, and a domineering devouring force surged from the blade. Crack! The black blade light flashed like lightning, and the streak of black trembled. Then, the sound of tearing clothes rang out, and with the devouring heavenly corpse's strike, the suddenly appeared figure finally revealed itself. It was a tall man, appearing rather young. His hair was a dazzling array of colors, and his eyes shimmered with a beautiful, multicolored brilliance. However, his face was cold, as if devoid of emotion. At that moment, the man extended his palm. A brilliant light swirled from his palm, just in time to block the black blade that was aimed at his throat. However, as he resisted, his palm trembled slightly. Grand Elder? The strong members of the Nine Phoenix clan, standing behind, were stunned at the sight of the man and could not help but shout in disbelief. Grand Elder? Lin Dong's eyes narrowed. The mysterious man before him was actually the Grand Elder of the Nine Phoenix clan. Could he have been hiding among the Nine Phoenix clan all along? Grand Elder Jiu Feng of the Nine Phoenix clan? Not far away, Lu Qing, Grand Elder Zhu Li, and the others also looked at the man in shock, before their expressions changed again. We never expected you Nine Phoenix clan to be so generous, even sending out the Grand Elder himself. Strange. A strong person in the reincarnation stage can't enter this shattered space. Kuan Yuan muttered in a deep voice. Reincarnation stage? Lin Dong's heart shook. The person in front of him was actually at the peak of the reincarnation stage? Hee, it's true that reincarnation stage experts can't enter, but if I suppress my strength to the revolution stage, I can still enter. The man, Jiu Feng, smiled faintly. Suppressing to the revolution stage? Grand Elder Zhu Li frowned. While you can suppress your strength, the unique reincarnation fluctuations of a reincarnation expert are hard to hide. Coincidentally, my clan possesses a rare treasure that can perfectly conceal my aura. Jiu Feng replied. You Nine Phoenix clan really have thick skin. Our clan's reincarnation experts have always followed the rules and never interfered. Yet you shamelessly come here. Could it be that you covet the devouring lord's inheritance? Lu Qing sneered, mocking. The strong of your clan are stubborn. What does that have to do with me? Jiu Feng smiled indifferently. Moreover, your clan doesn't have such a treasure to conceal the reincarnation fluctuations. Otherwise, I suspect you would have acted as well. Lu Qing snorted coldly, clearly disdainful of the Nine Phoenix clan's methods. Grand Elder Jiu Feng, you've suppressed your strength, which means you're now on par with us, right? Hee, but the thing ahead of us isn't easy to deal with. Grand Elder Zhu Li smiled. That's not necessarily the case. Jiu Feng's eyes narrowed. The next moment, a brilliant, dazzling light suddenly erupted from his body. As the light surged, his figure became illusory, and 3 identical figures appeared beside him. The 3 figures were identical, and even their auras were indistinguishable from the original body. This scene caused many of the powerful experts to gasp in surprise. 9 Phoenix split technique? Lu Qing and the others' eyes widened in shock. Jiu Feng executed the technique. With a flick of his sleeve, the 4 figures merged together, becoming indistinguishable, and in the next moment, a streak of rainbow light flashed as they charged toward the devouring deity temple. The 4 rainbow lights zipped through the air. The devouring heavenly corpse's eyes flashed with black light, and it slashed through the air with its long blade, cutting through space. The black light flashed, and one of the rainbow lights was sliced in half. With one slash, it took down one clone. The devouring heavenly corpse moved with ghostly steps, retreating swiftly. Its black long blade cut through the air, creating sharp and swift blade lights that sliced through space. Shoo! Another rainbow light clone was cut down. In just 10 steps, half of the 4 clones, including the original body of Jiu Feng, were eliminated. The devouring heavenly corpse's strength far exceeded their expectations. Whoosh! Another black blade light howled through the air, and the 3rd rainbow light was shattered. At this point, Jiu Feng's original body was finally revealed, and he was still 10 or so steps away from the stone stairs. Humph! Jiu Feng felt the devouring heavenly corpse's brutal attacks. His eyes flashed, and with a cold grunt, he showed no intention of dodging. 10 steps was nothing to him. He took a step forward, and the stone stairs were now within reach. Just as the final step of Jiu Feng was about to land, a sharp black light seemed to pierce through the void, cutting mercilessly through Jiu Feng's back and emerging from his heart. Ah! Seeing this, Luo Tong and the others were instantly terrified. Could it be that even the Grand Elder couldn't defeat this damned monster? Grand Elder Mu Di's palm also trembled, but there was a hint of relief in his eyes. Sizzle! The black blade light pierced through Jiu Feng's chest, but to everyone's surprise, no blood gushed out. Instead, a dazzling radiance surged, and they saw a light rainbow suddenly shoot out from Jiu Feng's body. The rainbow condensed, transforming back into Jiu Feng's form. Finally, with one step, he landed steadily on the stone steps. Wow! The surrounding crowd erupted in astonishment, many with faces full of admiration. Jiu Feng, the Grand Elder of the 9 Phoenix clan, had suppressed his strength to the reincarnation stage, but his technique was still unfathomably profound. So, Jiu Feng's 9 Phoenix split technique has reached this level. Impressive, said Grand Elder Zhu Li, narrowing his eyes and smiling faintly. Jiu Feng, stepping onto the stone steps, gave a faint smile. His expression was as calm as a still lake, but Lin Dong could clearly see that blood was dripping from his palm hidden within his sleeve. Clearly, he had been injured during his brief confrontation with the devouring heavenly corpse. This devouring heavenly corpse seems too powerful, Lin Dong muttered, waving his sleeve to retrieve the devouring heavenly corpse he had thrown earlier. His heart felt a mix of sorrow and anger. Compared to the one before them, the corpse in his hand seemed like a broken piece of junk. This devouring heavenly corpse is no ordinary one, came Yan's voice in Lin Dong's mind. Huh? What's going on? Lin Dong was startled. The ones crafted by the devouring lord could also resist reincarnation stage experts, but they weren't this strong, Yan said, his voice thoughtful. Then what's the deal with it? Lin Dong asked, puzzled. He too could feel that this devouring heavenly corpse was excessively powerful. Even someone as strong as Grand Elder Jiu Feng had only barely managed to push through with some special techniques and still suffered injury. I'm not sure for now, Yan replied, shaking his head, unwilling to provide an answer. You're Lin Dong, aren't you? At this moment, a cold voice suddenly came from beside him. It was Jiu Feng, glaring at Lin Dong with icy eyes. Lin Dong sensed the malice in Jiu Feng's words and took a step back, smiling. So, even the Grand Elder of the 9 Phoenix clan has heard of my name. Jiu Feng glared at Lin Dong and suddenly took a step forward. Seeing this, Lin Dong's expression turned icy. His vast spiritual energy swept out, his gaze sharp as a blade, locking onto Jiu Feng. Though the latter was a reincarnation stage expert, his power was suppressed to the revolution stage level in this broken space. So if it came to a fight, Lin Dong wasn't afraid. Grand Elder Jiu Feng, you've only just climbed the stone steps with great difficulty. If we fight and you fall off, it won't be so easy to come back up, Lin Dong said coldly, gripping the Thunder Emperor's scepter, which flashed with lightning. Are you threatening me? Jiu Feng sneered. I'm just stating the facts, Lin Dong replied calmly, his gaze unwavering. Haha, Grand Elder Jiu Feng, Lin Dong is the punishment elder of my dragon clan. You'd better not make things difficult for him, or else I'm afraid we'll have no choice but to spar, said Lu Qing, seeing the standoff. His eyes turned cold as he smiled. Though Jiu Feng was a reincarnation stage expert, it was clear that Lu Qing was not afraid of him at all. Indeed, I hope Grand Elder Jiu Feng will engage in a fair competition, Grand Elder Zhu Li also added, smiling, his tone clearly supporting Lin Dong. A cold gleam flashed in Jiu Feng's eyes. He stared at Lin Dong for a moment, then smiled faintly. Since the Dragon Clan and the Heavenly Demon Mink Clan are speaking for him, I'll let him off this time. Lin Dong slightly curled his lips. The Nine Phoenix Clan really wasn't a good bunch. During their standoff, the devouring heavenly corpse stood quietly in front of the temple. Seeing this, Kuan Yuan's eyes flashed, and he suddenly surged forward. He clasped his hands together, and the energy between his palms thickened, sending out ripples of reincarnation energy. Whoosh! The devouring heavenly corpse paid no attention to who had charged in, attacking without mercy. The black blade light flashed, but when it made contact with Kuan Yuan's palms, the thick energy wrapped around the blade, entangling it. Screech! A harsh sound echoed as Kuan Yuan's face quickly turned pale. Clearly, he was desperately trying to block the devouring heavenly corpse's attack. Among the many powerful figures from the Kuanping clan at the rear, a beautiful silver-haired woman with a graceful figure like a wild goose swiftly soared out, disappearing in a flash and reappearing beside Kuan Yuan. Grand Elder, she said, seeing Kuan Yuan's pale face and speaking quickly, go in. You have some connection with the Devouring Lord. Perhaps you might be able to inherit his legacy, Kuan Yuan said in a low, urgent voice. But Kuan Ling wanted to say more, but when she saw Kuan Yuan's furious expression, she clenched her teeth and quickly rushed forward, finally leaping onto the stone stairs. Whoosh! Just as she stepped onto the stairs, a muffled sound rang out. She turned back to see Kuan Yuan's arm flying off, and his body was sent sprawling backward in a desperate manner. Her eyes immediately reddened. Kuan Yuan had sacrificed his arm to help her enter. Young friend Lin Dong, it seems we are fated to have no connection with the devouring deity temple. From here on out, it's up to you, Grand Elder Zhu Li said with a sigh, shaking his head. The devouring heavenly corpse was too powerful. It was like one person could hold off an army of 10,000. Lin Dong nodded slightly, glancing at the two figures on the stone stairs, then turned and slowly pushed open the grand door to the devouring deity temple. Creak! The heavy stone door creaked loudly as it was slowly pushed open, and with it came a breath of ancient air, as if sealed for thousands of years. In that instant, it felt like stepping back into the ancient times. Beyond the stone door was pitch-black darkness, with no light at all. The oppressive darkness made one's heart race slightly. Behind, many powerful figures stared at the open stone door, their eyes filled with burning anticipation. However, when their gazes fell on the figure ahead of them, holding a black long knife before the temple, the heat in their eyes slowly faded, replaced by disappointment and unwillingness. Although they were only a few hundred yards away from the temple, at their speed, they would reach it in the blink of an eye. But that mere distance felt like an insurmountable chasm. Even Kuan Yuan, strong as he was, had lost an arm just to delay them for a moment. While at his level of strength, an arm could regenerate, it was still a serious injury. Big brother, we'll wait for you outside, Little Yin called loudly to Lin Dong. Lin Dong nodded, casting a quick glance at Jiu Feng and the silver-haired woman, Kuan Ling. Without further hesitation, he stepped into the temple. Seeing this, Jiu Feng and Kuan Ling hesitated for a moment, then also stepped forward. At this point, even if it was a mountain of swords or a sea of fire, they had no choice but to venture in. Boom! As soon as the three entered the temple, The heavy stone door slammed shut with a loud noise, sending dust rising and cutting off all outside sight. "It looks like we can only wait and see," Little Mink sighed, shaking his head as he looked at the closed door. The devouring deity temple was indeed difficult to enter. Hee, young brother Lin Dong carries the ancestral devouring talisman. "I'm sure his chances of inheriting the devouring lord's legacy are very high." Grand Elder Zhu Li chuckled softly, his voice low enough only for a few to hear. "Really letting that kid off easy," Lu Qing muttered, rolling his eyes. He then casually sat down, looking quite carefree. Since the legacy wasn't his fate, he had already given up on the idea. The others around him also laughed and sat down. In the sky above, many powerful figures could only shake their heads helplessly. Yet, they didn't disperse. Instead, they waited with reluctance, hoping for another opportunity. As the atmosphere around the lone peak grew quieter, far in the distance, it seemed that black mist was slowly seeping in. A light breeze blew by, and the black mist strangely dissipated. Grand Elder Zhu Li, who had been meditating with his eyes closed, suddenly opened them, his brow furrowing as he glanced toward the distance, a hint of confusion in his eyes. He then shook his head and slowly closed his eyes again. As they stepped through the stone door, darkness overwhelmed their vision like a rising tide. However, Lin Dong could still hear the faint breaths of two people not far behind. Clearly, Jiu Feng and Kuan Ling were following him. "Why is there nothing here?" Lin Dong carefully moved forward, but the familiar darkness remained, with no light emerging. His brows furrowed slightly. Lin Dong's eyes flickered. He expanded his spiritual energy, using it to probe the surroundings. Just as Lin Dong's spiritual energy began to spread, his expression suddenly changed. He realized that the energy he had sent out was vanishing in strange, minuscule amounts, almost as if something hidden in the dark was devouring it. "Ah!" A soft exclamation came from behind. It was Kuan Ling, her voice filled with astonishment. Lin Dong secretly thought to himself. It seemed that Kuan Ling was like him, attempting to use spiritual energy for detection, only to find that it was mysteriously devoured. "You two juniors, step back. This place will be under my control for now." As Lin Dong was thinking, the cold voice of Jiu Feng suddenly echoed. Lin Dong furrowed his brow but ignored him. Upon hearing this, Kuan Ling also furrowed her delicate brows and replied coldly, "Senior Jiu Feng, you are already a peak reincarnation stage expert. This inheritance likely offers you little benefit. Why abandon your own path for this?" Kuan Ling's voice was clear and cold, but the tone of mockery was unmistakable. This made Lin Dong smile, feeling quite refreshed. "Little girl, I'm not at the point where you can teach me a lesson." Jiu Feng's cold, furious voice rang out, and with a wave of his sleeve, brilliant light erupted, sweeping fiercely toward the dark side on the right. "You!" In the darkness, Kuan Ling saw Jiu Feng take action without considering his status and immediately became slightly angry. Her figure shifted backward, and a tremendous wave of spiritual energy surged out, transforming into a silver-white lotus. Bang! The dazzling beam of light slammed into the silver lotus, and the tremendous shockwave erupted. Jiu Feng remained still, while Kuan Ling let out a muffled groan. After all, Jiu Feng was a peak reincarnation stage expert. If not for being in this shattered space, Kuan Ling would have been no match for him in a single exchange. Although her strength was suppressed here, she was still extremely formidable. In direct combat, she was naturally no match for him. This old man has really lost all face. Lin Dong, sensing the movement behind him, couldn't help but curse silently in his heart. Jiu Feng was much senior to Kuan Ling, and yet he acted so shamelessly. It truly made one lose respect. "Kid, and you, stop right there." Just as Lin Dong's thoughts finished, a cold shout from Jiu Feng came from behind, accompanied by a surge of overwhelming and sharp primordial energy. "You old man at your age, it seems like you've really turned into a dog." Seeing that this old man had even taken action against him, Lin Dong's expression turned completely cold. He quickly retreated to dodge the attack, coldly sneering without holding back. "Ha!" A soft laugh echoed from the darkness not far away, sounding light and refreshing. Kid, you're seeking death. Jiu Feng's face turned grim, his eyes cold as he glared at Lin Dong. Don't think that just because the Dragon Clan and the Heavenly Demon Mink Clan support you, I can't do anything to you. Then come try. Lin Dong sneered. As long as this old man didn't use his full reincarnation stage power, Lin Dong wasn't afraid of him. Humph. Coldness surged in Jiu Feng's eyes. With a snort, his figure moved as quickly as a ghost, his palm striking out like an eagle's claw, with dazzling light emanating from his fingertips. There was an eerie, reincarnation-like fluctuation in the air. Jiu Feng, the elder, was clearly preparing to kill. You old dog. Lin Dong gritted his teeth, and with a wave of his mind, silver-white spiritual energy surged out like a tidal wave. Lightning flashed within it, transforming into thunder, and a thunderous dragon roared as it charged toward Jiu Feng. Boom! Jiu Feng didn't even retreat. With one claw, he crushed the thunder dragon. Whoosh! The thunder dragon exploded, lightning flashing. A scepter, crackling with thunder arcs, shot out, targeting his throat with precision. Clang! Jiu Feng sneered and flicked his finger, directly stopping the tip of the Thunder Emperor's scepter. The brilliant light surged, preventing Lin Dong's attack from advancing further. You brat, you do have some skills. Your primordial energy isn't much, but your spiritual energy is impressive. However, with just that, you probably still can't stop me, Jiu Feng said. Whoosh, whoosh. However, just as his words fell, a fierce wind suddenly swept in from behind him. Jiu Feng sneered coldly and waved his sleeve. With a wave of his palm, a brilliant shield of light appeared. Bang! Bang! Silver-white lotus petals collided heavily with the shield, but couldn't break through it. However, this caused Jiu Feng to slightly divert his attention. Lin Dong seized the opportunity to retreat. He glanced toward the darkness nearby, where the silver-haired woman, Kuan Ling, had made her move. It seemed she had a sharp mind. With only the three of them here, if Lin Dong were to fall to Jiu Feng, she would have no chance of escaping either. In a one-on-one fight, it would be hard for them to withstand Jiu Feng's strength, so she wasn't about to let Lin Dong fall here. Two juniors, do you really think you can fight me together? Just as his expression darkened and he was about to make another move, his face suddenly twisted with shock, and he found himself unable to move a single muscle. This bizarre reaction left Lin Dong momentarily stunned. Just as he was about to speak, Yan's grave voice echoed in his mind, "Be careful. Your primordial energy and spiritual energy are both vanishing." What? Lin Dong was taken aback. His consciousness stirred, and he quickly noticed that both the primordial energy within his body and the spiritual energy in his Niwen palace had inexplicably drained away. What's going on? Lin Dong's eyes darted in alarm. If he lost all his primordial and spiritual energy in this place, even a single strike from Jiu Feng would be enough to destroy him. No need to panic. It's the same for everyone. The moment you set foot here, your powers will gradually be consumed, Yan explained. Then what do we do? If our energy gets completely drained, then, Lin Dong asked gravely. Yan also fell silent. He had tried to halt the loss of Lin Dong's primordial and spiritual energy, but to no avail. Lin Dong frowned deeply, thoughts racing through his mind. After a brief moment, he gritted his teeth, sat cross-legged on the floor, and said, "If this damned hall is going to devour my energy, then I'll just devour it right back." Seated, he focused, and the ancestral devouring talisman within him began to vibrate intensely. If one could see him now, they would notice dark lines extending across his skin, exuding an aura of devouring. Buzz. As Lin Dong activated his devouring power, he was pleasantly surprised to find that the energy drifting in this darkness began to slowly flow toward him, trickling into his body. While this flow was slower than even his normal cultivation outside, it was enough to keep Lin Dong optimistic, as it at least ensured he could maintain his strength. That old Kurd doesn't have the ancestral devouring talisman, so he won't be able to restore his energy here. His power will gradually drain away. Once it's all gone, let's see how he plans to handle me then. Lin Dong shot a fierce glance into the darkness, eyes flashing with ferocity. Huh? Wait, something's wrong. A thought shot through Lin Dong's mind, and his expression shifted abruptly, as he realized in shock that another devouring force had emerged from within the darkness, contending with him for the already scarce energy here. How is this possible? The revelation sent a shockwave through Lin Dong's spirit.